become numb to your life. Yes, numb. NUMB, but in the best way possible. And when you start to change your perspective on what numbness actually is, you start to become numb to things that you want to be numb to instead of the things that you really wouldn't want to be numb to. For instance, some people are very numb to the fact of happiness, to joy, enjoyability, just having a life that they actually love, numb to the fact that something could work out for you. That you've just gone through so much trauma, so much hurt that you don't think that it's possible for you. But when you become numb to the fact of the opposite, you literally create the positive version that you actually want. So now the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I'm super numb to things not working out, and I'm very accepting and sensitive to things working out. I think the opposite of being numb is being sensitive, right? If you're numb to something, you absolutely can't perceive that thing. It's almost like you put on your blinders. It's like that thing just really doesn't exist to you, or you don't want it to exist. A better way to put it is that it does exist, but you're numbing either your mind or your body or your thoughts, whatever, to make it feel like it doesn't exist to you because it's just so painful. On the opposite side, sensitivity is when you literally cannot avoid the feeling of something and you allow it to fully embrace itself in its fullest form in order to be used for your benefit. But also, your numbness could be used for your benefit. So, when I am doing certain things in my life, as a ambitiously driven person, I guess, whatever you want to call it, um, I tend to want to be involved in a lot of things. And when you get a lot of no's, it brings a yes. And when you get a lot of yeses, there may be a no in there. So if I want to do 15 different things with my life, right, I'm not going to get a yes to all 15 or a no to all 15. There's going to be some ratio there. But when I get a no to something that I want, it literally doesn't affect me at all. And for anyone that's in the live, you can, ask any questions that you want to while I'm speaking on this, but it really doesn't affect me. And I'm super numb to the fact of things not working out, which doesn't really necessarily mean a bad thing. What it means is that I'm super insensitive. Like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't weigh on me. It doesn't take a toll. And really, it used to. It really, really used to. And when I shifted my mind from everything being my fault, my problem, my responsibility, my everything, and I gave a lot of that to God, it was really easy to be numb to things that should hurt me, right? Because one, you get this innocent nature about yourself that things happen, things don't happen, things don't pan out, things turn out better than they should, et cetera, et cetera. And when you're just super sensitive to everything, I'm not a person that is a therapist. And regardless if you are a licensed therapist or not, I think that outside of people who are clinically whatever they want to be, we're not even going to touch on that. People who are really, really anxious, just in general, just generally anxious people, have a really high sensitivity to everything going around them and a high sensitivity to everything that happens, everything they see, everything they do, everything they say, everything everyone else says, everything they hear, everything. There's literally overstimulation of life. That's what anxiety is. And that's why anxiety is super hard to get rid of. Super hard to get rid of because it's like a never-ending cycle of life. How can you get rid of anxiety when anxiety is triggering you in every single part of life? Well, the only way you'd not be able to be anxious is if you either reduce your sensitivity to all the things you're sensitive to, or to literally not be living. Like, those are your two options. So when you're being constantly triggered by something, constantly annoyed, constantly this, constantly that, you have to I also think it's a muscle, like build up you have to build up that muscle to be able to not be sensitive to it. So not that this is the end all be all, but take a lot of the responsibility that you're putting on yourself to make yourself happy, to make yourself strong, to make yourself fixed, whatever the case may be, and put it onto somebody else. And instead of blaming your ex and blaming your parents and blaming your this and blaming your that, you can put all of that hurt, pain, and annoyance onto God. Quickest, easiest thing. And that's pretty much the only person who welcomely welcomingly accepts all your problems. Like your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your aunt, your uncle, your bestie, the person you met 5 years ago, the person you met yesterday, are not going to accept all the things about you that you don't like. But he will. God will. Um, and that's just the easiest way to do it. And be honest. And be honest. And another thought that's been floating around in my head is about advantage and taking advantage of people or feeling like your advantage is being taken of you. And I feel like that's a okay. This actually goes back to a different topic, but I feel like people who say that, like people take advantage of me, blah 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 blah, blah are very much like surface level humans, and I literally cannot talk to, communicate with, or discuss with those type of people. Where I'm not talking about those type of people, like the type of people who literally constantly are talking about other humans, like specifically in their lives, like so and so is bad, so and so is this, so and so is whatever. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not talking about those people. But what I am talking about though is constantly blaming other people, constantly putting the blame and the hurt and whatever on other people. And again, it's just like anxiety. It's a whole cycle that just keeps going, keep going, keep going, keeps going. And the reason why it keeps going is because you're allowing it to keep going because your sensitivity is still extremely high to the reaction you get. So if you continue to just, instead of retracting back, you kind of like push on it a little bit, it'll probably destruct itself. So if you constantly are just like, if you get a rejection from a job or a person or an idea or a thought, whatever, and you constantly are just feeling like, whoa, this is not good. This is terrible. You need to not retract. You need to keep going. You need to hold strong and not letting yourself go through the hard times means that the next hard time is going to be even harder because you didn't learn from the hard time. The hard time is not so that the hard times you're experiencing are not so that you can avoid them and you learn how to avoid them because that's what I did for a long time. I was like, all these things are painful, all these things hurt, let me just avoid them. But then I slowly realized that every time you avoid something that was supposed to be a lesson, the next lesson gets even harder because you did not learn what you were supposed to learn. So now you're kind of stuck. You're behind on the notes. You're behind in the class. The professor has is on chapter 15 and you're still learning chapter 6. You have been left in the dust. And to catch up feels again anxiety. You're super sensitive to all things happening to you because you're not learning the lessons as they come. So if you can flow in in the grain of life instead of against the grain, then that's something that's super helpful because it helps you to navigate life without trying to avoid the mistakes and the sadness because the sadness are simply things that are being uncovered. And in one of the groups that I'm in, a girl asked me, or not, she asked the group, I answered. I think I was the only person, maybe me and someone else, but who answered. It's a small group. And not a small group as in like church. I mean, like a small group as in like literal small group of people. And she was just talking about like all the things happening, all these bad things happening. And I was like, girl, You can't use the same exact tactics that got you through this thing in the past and try to use them towards this new issue you're having in the future because it's a completely different layer. It's a completely different journey. It's a completely different monster. Not monster, but okay, monster. Like it's a completely different problem, issue, everything else. So it just using the same tactic to try to solve an issue that isn't the same issue. Like you're never gonna have the same issue twice. You're never gonna have the same success twice. You're never gonna have the same love twice. You're never gonna have the same hate of something twice. You're never gonna have the same thing twice. You have something similar, and then you start to put all those similar situations together in your mind and you kind of create a generalization off of it, which is a totally different thing, which is completely unnecessary. You don't need to generalize anything. But when you start to make generalizations on things, you actually start to hurt yourself more because you're actually telling yourself a lie about something that never even happened, or you're making things worse than they are, or you're making things better than they actually were. And so, another thing is that, like, when you are living your best life and you're going to tell the story about it, or you're living your worst life and you go to tell a story about it, everything that you're saying is based off of the fact that you think that you remember what happened. The thing about it is, when you're in a situation, happy or sad, your emotions are completely off of their norm. Your emotions are completely off of how they should be. They're completely skewed. They are. So your normal is here, and when you get a really great grade in a class, it kind of shoots up here, right? You're not feeling how you normally are. You kind of feel like on cloud nine. You're like, hey, life is lit. And then you go back to your normal everyday life, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a really sad moment, an argument with your boyfriend. And then you also get really, really, really sad about that thing and you go off your norm. Again, those are the 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 waverings that you have in life. And when you're having those waverings, you're not remembering exactly what happened the way it does. That's why I also, one, don't want people to take my YouTube page as a like verbatim, do this because she said this. She looks successful. She looks like this. She did this or she doesn't do that. So I'm going to make decisions based off her videos or anybody on the internet or anyone you know or anyone ever. Okay. Anyone ever. Because that's a setup for failure because you're just assuming they remember. Like, I would never take advice from someone. Let's just say they're like 60 and they're like, yeah, back in my day, that's what we did. We did this, blah, blah. This is how I got to where I'm at. What, like, sure. Yeah. The general story is probably true, but you're not going to tell me the exact story based off truth. You're going to tell me based off how you were feeling in those moments, what your body actually allowed you to perceive about those moments, what actually happened is completely skewed and none of us have evidence of what actually happened or how everything actually went down on the time to time matter. Again, we're not going to have that for anything. So that's why we live in a world of generalizations. Even though you shouldn't make generalizations, we live in a world of generalizations because we can't operate any other way because we have no possible way of remembering, recollecting anything to the exact T because that will leave us in a constant state of future thinking and past thinking. And that doesn't make sense if we're always living in the future. I mean, always living in the present. But on top of that, it's just everything that people say or that they're talking about is from a perspective of either having already done it, either never have done it, doing it, never have done it, but they want to do it and they think they know how to do it, or they've never done it and they're bashing it because it's something they would never do because they think it's too hard. I say live your own life. That's what I say. I say live your own life. Take everything everyone says with a grain of salt. This includes your parents, family, friends, everyone you know in person and online. Take everyone's thoughts with a grain of salt because nobody actually knows what they're doing out here. None of it actually matters. Make sure that you're anchored into whatever you believe because humans are faulty, systems are faulty, like departments are faulty, life is faulty. The only thing that's not faulty is if you have something to actually anchor onto. And that's what I strongly suggest everyone do because that is just so important to navigating your life without having to navigate through hurt as well.